At Revenge Mosaicum, there's a particular quiet that settles when a family stops pretending all at once. It usually happens in a room meant for authority, a desk, a chair pulled a little too close. This story stayed with us because the moment wasn't loud. It was organized. Marin Caldwell had always been the one who handled things without being asked. That habit is what made this moment matter. This is where she takes over. The chair across from my father's desk felt smaller than I remembered. He didn't ask me to sit. He just slid the folder toward me, thick enough that the edges caught on the wood. "Read it," he said. Voice even. Calm. Like this was a scheduling issue. I opened it anyway. Pages of numbers, dates, government letterhead, words like wire fraud and federal exposure stacked neatly on top of each other. My mother stayed on the couch, hands folded in her lap. Grant stood by the window, staring out like there was something interesting on the lawn. "This is about Grant," I said, keeping my eyes on the paper. My father nodded once. He made mistakes. Grant turned. "It's being handled." I looked up then. Handled how? My mother leaned forward. "Marin, listen. You don't have attachments. No kids. No mortgage." My stomach tightened. "Say it." My father didn't hesitate. "You plead. You take responsibility. Minimum sentence is 3 years. Minimum security." Grant finally spoke. "We'll make it right later." I closed the folder carefully. "I need time." "How much?" 48 hours. A pause. My father studied me, then nodded. "That's reasonable." There was a relief in the room that didn't belong to me. Sometimes families confuse silence for consent. We noticed that here. I stood, slid the folder back. "I'll call you." Outside. My hands shook when I reached for my keys. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just drove. If this moment feels familiar, you know where to find us. I didn't turn toward my apartment. Muscle memory tried. But I overrode it and kept going until the streets thinned and the lake slipped out of view. My phone buzzed on the console. "Mom." I let it ring twice, then answered. "I'm driving." "Good," she said softly. "You sounded overwhelmed in there." I was surprised. Anyone would be. A breath. "Your father trusts you. He trusts me to disappear." Silence. Then, "That's not fair." I focused on the road. Grant didn't say a word. "He's scared." "So am I." She lowered her voice. "This will pass. 3 years isn't forever. Minimum," I said. "You said minimum." Another pause. I could hear dishes in the background. Normal life continuing. "We'll support you." "How?" "We'll help when you get out." I pulled into a grocery lot and cut the engine. The steering wheel was cold against my palms. "You didn't ask if I'd do it. You didn't say no." "I asked for 48 hours. "That's thinking time," she replied quickly. "Not a negotiation." I stared at the dark windshield. "Don't call again tonight." She hesitated. "Marin," I ended the call. I sat there longer than planned, counting breaths, letting the quiet settle. Then I reached into my bag and pulled my laptop onto the passenger seat. Not to fix anything, just to look. The diner was almost empty. One waitress wiping the counter. A man asleep in a booth with his jacket still on. I ordered coffee I didn't touch and opened my laptop. The screen glow felt too bright. I logged in slow, careful, like I was stepping onto thin ice. The report loaded in pieces. I scanned the top first. Name, address. All correct. Then the score. Lower than it should have been. Low enough to make my throat tighten. I scrolled. 3 credit cards. All maxed. Combined balance just over $400,000. Opened years ago. I didn't recognize the banks, but the dates lined up with periods I'd been barely making rent. A business loan sat beneath them. $1.2 million. Defaulted. The borrower listed as a consulting company tied to Grant's name. My name sat there too. Guarantor. I pressed my palm flat on the table until the chill settled me. My phone buzzed. Grant. Hey. He started, voice lighter than it had been in the study. You okay? I'm looking at my credit. A pause. Short. Telling. Why? Because my name is on your loan. That's a misunderstanding. The amount is $1.2 million. It was temporary. You didn't mention it. We were going to, he replied quickly. Dad handled most of it. The waitress slid a refill near my elbow. Coffee sloshed. I didn't look up. There are 3 cards, I said, all opened under my name. Silence stretched. I heard breathing. Then, you weren't using your credit anyway. That landed hard. I'm hanging up, I said. Don't call back. I did one more thing before closing the laptop. I checked the recovery emails tied to the accounts. Dad's address. Everyone. At Revenge Mosaicum. We notice when someone stops shaking before they stand up. I paid in cash and left the coffee untouched. Outside, the night air felt sharp, clear. I drove home knowing the 48 hours hadn't been permission. They'd been a mistake. I got home close to midnight, left my shoes by the door, sat on the floor with my laptop because the couch felt too soft for this. I pulled Grant's company filings first. Public records. Clean on the surface. Too clean. The bank statements took longer to load. When they did, the pattern showed itself fast. Money came in, large amounts. Then it vanished. 10,000 here, 15 there. Luxury travel agencies. High-end car leases. A contractor paid in chunks that lined up with the renovation timeline at my parents' house. My phone lit up again. Dad this time. Marin, he began, low and careful. Your brother says you're upset. I'm looking at his books. A breath. You shouldn't be digging around. My name is on the loan. That doesn't mean it means everything. Silence settled between us. Not tense. Calculating. He was under pressure. Dad said finally, investors can be demanding. So you paid yourselves with their money. That's not what happened. The contractor address matches your house. Another pause. Longer. You're reading too much into it. I closed the laptop partway. You let him use me. We assumed you'd understand. He replied, You always do. I stared at the dark screen, my reflection faint and warped. You didn't misunderstand me, I said quietly. You counted on me. The call ended without goodbye. I opened the laptop again. This time, I wasn't searching for answers. I was building a timeline. By morning, the timeline was clean. Too clean. Years of decisions stacked neatly on top of each other, all pointing the same way. I drove past my parents' house on the way to work and didn't stop. The place looked the same as it always had. Manicured lawn, fresh mulch, a banner still rolled up in the garage from some fundraiser last fall. That house mattered more to them than any of us. I pulled into a side street and checked the county records on my phone. The valuation popped up fast, just over $3 million. Nearly paid off. No lines, no surprises. My phone buzzed again. Grant, you're making this bigger than it needs to be, he said, skipping pleasantries. Dad's stressed. Dad spent investor money on granite countertops. That wasn't my call. You didn't stop it. A pause. We were protecting the family. I am the family. He exhaled sharply. You've always been dramatic. That one stung more than the rest. I ended the call without answering. At lunch, I stepped outside the office and called a number I hadn't used in years. A legal service line I trusted. I need to form a holding company, I said. Fast, clean, how fast? As soon as possible. A keyboard clicked on the other end. Delaware work for you? Yes. Single member. Yes. When the confirmation email came through, I didn't feel relief, just alignment. That night, I printed one document, a quitclaim deed template, simple, direct, the kind of paper that changes everything quietly. I set it on the kitchen table and went to bed without turning off the light. The confirmation sat on my screen like any other meeting. Time, address, a name I trusted. My phone rang while I was brushing my teeth. "Mom, this time." "You're coming back tonight," she said, not asking. "I'll be there." A small exhale. "Good. Your father wants to finalize things." "Finalize what?" "The plan," she replied, "before anyone panics." I rinsed my mouth and watched the water swirl. "Tell him I'm trying to help." "That's all we need," she said quickly. "Just don't complicate it." At the office, I kept my head down, answered emails, took notes, lived inside routine until my calendar buzzed again. 6:30, mobile notary confirmed. On the drive north. Grant called once. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. "This doesn't have to get ugly," he said when I finally answered. "You trust me, right?" "I trust paperwork." "That's not what I meant." "I know." He lowered his voice. "Dad's counting on you." I pulled into the driveway and shut off the engine. The house lights were all on. Too bright, too expectant. "I'll be inside in a minute," I said. "Make sure everyone's ready." I ended the call and sat there, hands still, breathing even, waiting for the knock that would seal it. Everyone was already in the study when I walked in. Dad stood behind his desk. Mom sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped too tightly. Grant paced once, then stopped when he saw the folder under my arm. "You took long enough." Dad said. "I had to be sure," I replied, placing the papers on the desk. "If I'm doing this, it has to work." Mom leaned forward. "We knew you'd come around." Grant crossed his arms. "So, what's the issue?" I took a breath. Slow on purpose. The amount involved puts this into asset seizure territory. If I plead, they won't just look at prison time. They'll freeze anything tied to the beneficiary. Dad's jaw tightened. Meaning the house," I said. "Renovations were paid with company money. That connects it." Mom shook her head. "They can't take this house." "They can," I said calmly. "Unless it isn't yours when the investigation starts." Grant stopped pacing. "What are you suggesting?" I slid the quitclaim deed forward. "A temporary transfer. Into a holding company. Clean. Anonymous." Dad scanned the page, eyes moving faster with each line. "This lists you as managing member." "That's the point." I said, "My name's already involved. I'm invisible otherwise. You can force a transfer back later." Grant leaned over Dad's shoulder. "It's fine. We just need this handled." Dad hesitated. "And if we don't, then everything freezes." I replied, "Including accounts you still need." The room went quiet. I could hear the clock tick behind me. Mom reached out, touching Dad's arm. "Thomas, we don't have time." A knock at the door cut through the air. The notary stepped in, briefcase in hand. "Evening." "I'm here for the signing." Dad looked at Grant. Grant nodded once. Dad picked up the pen. His hand shook just enough to notice. "You swear this protects us." "I swear it buys you time," I said. He signed. Mom followed. Grant last, jaw tight, eyes on the page. The notary stamped, gathered her things, and left without a word. As the door closed, Grant exhaled. "See? Done." I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder. "Yes," I said. "It is. No one noticed the shift yet. They wouldn't. Not until morning." The message came in just after 9. Subject line plain, recording confirmed. I was in my kitchen, barefoot, coffee cooling untouched. I read it twice, then set the phone down. Dad called minutes later. "What does recorded mean?" he asked. His voice sounded thinner, older. "It means it's done." I replied, "The transfer's complete." That was temporary. It was legal. Mom took the phone from him. I could hear the shift. "Marin, don't do this." "I didn't," I said. "You did." Grant cut in, louder. "You can't just take the house." I didn't take it, I said. You handed it over. Silence pressed in. Then Dad again, controlled but sharp. Reverse it. That isn't how deeds work. Mom's breath hitched. We were trying to save our family. You were trying to save Grant. Grant swore under his breath. You planned this. I prepared. I said, there's a difference. I gave them the terms calmly. 30 days. Vacate the property. No retaliation. No contact. Dad laughed once. Hollow. You think you've won. I think I'm finished, I said. The call ended without goodbye. I stood there a moment longer, then washed my mug and set it in the rack. Outside, a delivery truck idled, ordinary noise, life continuing. At Revenge Mosaicum, we notice when control changes hands quietly. I opened my laptop and started the next step. The house sold in pieces, not all at once. An offer, then a counter, then paperwork that moved slower than I expected. I didn't go to the closing. I signed where I needed to and let it pass without ceremony. I moved my things into a smaller place after that. Brick building, quiet block. A tree outside the window that drops leaves early. I like that it doesn't try to hold on too long. Dad sent one message. It was short. You didn't have to do it this way. I read it, set the phone down, and didn't answer. Grant never reached out. Mom tried once, then stopped. The silence felt different this time. Not heavy, just final. I paid off what had my name on it, watched the balances clear, watched my credit rebuild line by line. The numbers mattered, but less than I thought they would. What changed most was smaller. I stopped bracing when my phone rang. I stopped explaining myself in rooms where no one was listening. I started signing my name slower, on leases, on decisions, on a life that finally felt like it belonged to me. Marin Caldwell didn't lose a family that night. She learned which parts were never hers to carry. If you stay with stories like this, you already know where to find us. At Revenge Mosaicum, we noticed she didn't take everything back. She only took what was real.